May 15, 2025 was a day like any other across most of the United States. National Weather Service has issued a enhanced risk for the early mornings from eastern Minnesota all the way into east central southern Michigan into a little bit of Ohio, with a 10% tornado risk leading the way, as well as a 30% hatched wind risk for West Michigan and northern Indiana, with a 30% large hail for most of the risk. As the day moves on, Wisconsin is heavily battered by severe weather, including multiple tornadoes. As the day moves on, the enhanced risk gets more extended into eastern Michigan and even more northwestern Ohio, with the tornado risk still at the high 10% hatched risk for Wisconsin through the Chicagoland area, through northern Indiana and southeastern Michigan. The 30% wind risk was slightly pushed more eastward towards Detroit and the Canadian border, with the hail being much more hatched risk in the 15% areas. As the day moves on, the risk doesn't seem to change. The tornado risk at this time is still the same. Nothing has changed. Wind has moved more south. Hail has become more apparent. The last update of the day shows no change in the tornado risk in Michigan, the wind risk, or the hail risk. What they did not anticipate was the true devastation that would come later that during these evening hours in West Michigan. Starting off the day over in Wisconsin, the first tornadoes of the day touched down just outside in from very western Minnesota into Wisconsin, where multiple EF2s happened in the towns of Juneau, Wisconsin, where in Juneau a senior living facility was directly impacted at EF2 intensity. As that lifted, another tornado hit EF2 hit the south side of Mayville, Wisconsin. The storms had died down for quite some time, till evening hours in Michigan, where multiple tornadoes touched down. One, an EF0 north of Drenthe, just east of Holland, touched down, destroying a few barns, and really that's it. Lifting shortly after touching down, lifting near the communities of Forest Grove Station and Forest Grove, Michigan. Another tornado touches down in Sandy Pines, which is a very popular resort. As it continues moving, it touches down almost instantly, doing EF1 damage to trees. As it continues its path northeast, it goes over a trailer park community, doing minor damage. As it continues, it does EF1 damage to trees uprooted a decent distance from the center of the tornado. About a quarter of a mile away, it was doing damage. As it continues northeast, it heads more directly into Dorr, Michigan, where it hits the most densely populated area of Dorr at EF1 intensity. Luckily, most of the damage done was minor roof damage. The worst was done to a company with slate roof peelage. Another EF1 touches down just south of Watson, Michigan. As it goes through small trailer park communities, it approaches the town of Martin, Michigan. As it crosses US Highway 31, it enters the outer parts of Martin, where at this farmstead it destroys the roof of one of the silos. It continues on northeast, impacting the Martin School before crossing 116th Street and the railroad, before continuing on in a field for quite some time and lifting just west of Orangeville, Michigan. That storm recycled just north of Orangeville to another EF1. It continued through rural Michigan. It crossed multiple lakes and ponds, doing EF1 damage to trees, lifting just southwest of Podunk, Michigan. Another EF1 touched down just east of Caledonia, Michigan, where it went through a mostly rural but some subdivisions during its life, one of the longest ones on the day, where then it crossed I-96 Grand River Ave and lifted just south of Saranac, Michigan. The final EF1 of the day touched down, last official EF1 of the day, touched down just north of Charlotte, Michigan, basically in Optimus Park, where it continued northeast on the ground for multiple miles, for about 15-ish miles. This tornado went along the I-69, alongside I-69 going just north of Potterville, then crossing I-69, crossing I-96, crossing a power plant, and entering the Lansing Metro, where before it could cross 496, it lifted just in the GMC moat, just south of GMC Motors. Another EF0 touchdown in Galesburg, Michigan, where it just crossed nothing for its whole life. It lifted inside of Battle Creek's Metro. Another EF1 touches down near Gregory, Michigan, in Detroit, National Weather Service of Detroit jurisdiction, on the one of the shorter tornadoes of the day so far. Then two more EF0s touch down. One east of St. Charles, lifts inside St. Charles. The final one touches down just outside of Flint, Michigan. Just south of Davison, just north, basically north of Atlas, Michigan, and only on the ground for about a block. And I am missing one tornado, but that's because this tornado, the Bellevue, Michigan EF0, should not be rated an EF0. The path this tornado took, according to the National Weather Service of Grand Rapids, does not match up with what we see when we look at satellite imagery taken shortly after the tornado. The tornado did touch. They agree where the tornado touched down, just south of St. Mary's Lake. May have touched down slightly earlier, but the path is not correct. They say it crossed south of White Rabbit Road and did not cross White Rabbit Road. In reality, it didn't, but it did not take the exact path they say. And it was not a weak tornado by any means. This tornado caused a scar through the woods of downed trees on 7/20/22. Trees, and then May 2025, after the tornado, you can see swaths of trees just down. If we continue up, you can see large trees knocked down. As the tornado continues, it crossed a road where by far some of the worst damage from this occurred. Many trees just snapped and down. Continued on most of its life, relatively weak, but there's still intense spots where you can see trees just down. Along with this, not only was there tornadoes associated with this, in Paw Paw, Michigan, where I was during the chase, they were hit by straight line winds. There were large branches down on power lines over here. Don't see much damage truly on the map. It's just confusing because multiple trees were down in Paw Paw. Power was out for the town, but by far the worst damage from the winds that I'm aware of happened just north of Holland, Michigan, in a small community known as Waukezu Woods. Where Post Avenue, and just south of the Ottawa County Fairgrounds, encountered intense 90-mile-an-hour straight-line winds surveyed by the National Weather Service of Grand Rapids. We don't have the most modern imagery. Right here, all trees in this area were destroyed as the winds made a path of destruction. The path was something similar. I'm sorry about that. The path was about along the lines of this as the most intense damage. Meanwhile, the damage was seen from Marquette Avenue, from just around Edgewood Drive up to Post, along Post, down Norwood, and some of the worst, hate that, was in the Marigold Woods subdivision, where the worst damage seen was down Port Chester Road, where homes were destroyed, and right here on Post Avenue, where it once was completely covered in trees. This house was devastated by trees, where the insurance companies have said it's a complete and utter loss. The intersection entering Wakazu Woods community no longer has most of its trees. The peaceful area of Wakazu Woods was devastated by 90-mile-an-hour winds. As we move down Post Avenue, we find the fairground and the intersection of Post Avenue and this road and Greenwood Drive. The Ottawa County Fairground sustained minimal damage to the main fairground portion, but the majority of the damage occurred along this fence line, where this tree that you can see here was completely knocked down in the wind. If we move down this road to right around here, this house, which is covered in shade with multiple trees in front of it, trees came down. All the trees behind this were destroyed and snapped. Did not look straight line winds. The lesson learned that we saw that day was Mother Nature will cause damage. The most saddening part is the tornado that went near into just south of Bellevue. That was truly not rated at its true potential, as seen from satellite imagery a couple days after the main storm. You see multiple swaths of trees down. After it crosses a river, after it crosses Battle Creek, you can see it continue to be powerful. After it crossed Wanadoja Creek, wherever it crossed, I don't know why I can't find it now, it continued to be powerful. It most likely, I would have to do an actual ground survey, but most likely it was EF1 intensity most of its life as it moved through these areas at decently intense intensity. I have no clue. I can't find that one spot now. But May 15 was a day that the National Weather Service of Grand Rapids and every other National Weather Service in West Michigan, a day that West Michigan will not forget for a long time due to the immense amount of damage done in the communities. After the storm had passed, Ottawa County had a few $1,000,000 of damage, mostly in the Waukezu Woods area. Allegan County issued a state of emergency for the damage done in communities by the wind, as well as the Martin EF1, which flattened at least one structure, maybe two, as well as the Door EF1, which went through multiple populated areas. Luckily, no one was reported killed from any of these storms in Allegan or Ottawa or Kent or any of the counties in Michigan. May 15 was a historic day for most of the country, especially since it was part of a larger outbreak the following day, which produced the Marion, Illinois EF4, as well as the Somerset, London, Kentucky EF4 the following day. Altogether, the outbreak alone was a severe outbreak impacting multiple metros, including St. Louis. Okay, that's really the only main metro impacted. Grand Rapids Metro as well was nearly impacted by tornadoes. Lansing Metro. It was an unfortunate event the following day on 5/16. 5/15 alone produced about half of Michigan's 30 tornadoes this year.